This video was intended originally to be a film study look at Zay Flowers. Haven't done one for over 5 months since after the Christmas Day win over the San Francisco 49ers. It ends up being a film study appreciation because I'm just such a big fan of the guy that they drafted, how they utilized him in 2023. I think he's only going to get better. From a statistical standpoint, is he ever going to get to 1,500 yards like fellow rookie Puka Nacua did last year? Probably not because of how many weapons there are in Baltimore. But nonetheless, I think he put up really solid, impressive numbers during his rookie year. 860 receiving yards, almost 77 catches. Did have 5 touchdown receptions and 1 touchdown run. That 77 catches, I think it's important to note, comes on 108 targets. And I say that because there's other rookies that received more opportunities in terms of overall targets. Even though, for myself personally, and probably you as well, many Ravens fans, we felt like there was times where he was kind of being force-fed the ball. But when you look at the targets, 108 again for the whole season, 77 catches, ends up being a 71% catch percentage. That's a pretty good number. Although the 11.1 yards per catch ends up just outside the top 15 for rookie wide receivers and tight ends. To mention a couple of other guys, Puka Nacua, 160 targets. Yes, you heard that right, 160 targets. Still had a 65% catch percentage with 6 touchdowns. A historic season for a rookie wide receiver, obviously, in terms of the total yards, especially when you consider how often he's used as a blocker at the point of attack. So a really unique year, high usage as a blocker in the Rams' 11 personnel compressed formations where they run the ball a lot under center, and then also producing the most receiving yards ever for a rookie. Now, Flowers didn't reach that standard, didn't even come close. Maybe he never will. But in terms of production related to opportunity, I think he lived up to the task. Specifically, when Andrews goes out in the Week 11 win over the Bengals, Flowers' usage increased. I don't want to say slightly, but it increased noticeably. The next 5 regular season games, 36 targets. And that includes only two balls thrown to him in the Ravens' Week 15 win against the Jags when Baltimore ran for 251 yards on the ground. So if you extrapolate out 36 targets over 5 games, it's on pace for 120 targets overall. But again, one of those games was a run-heavy play call situation because we ran for 250 against the Jags. Overall, his 108 targets for rookies ranks behind Nacua, obviously. Lions tight end Sam Laporta, 120 targets in a similarly historic year for a tight end. And then Jordan Addison, the rookie wide receiver for the Vikings, who I think had 10 touchdown catches, 108 targets. Rashee Rice for Kansas City, 79 catches on 102 targets. So very efficient, if you ask me, in terms of Laporta, Addison, Rice, and Flowers. The only difference is Laporta and Addison put up 10 touchdowns each. Let some of the film flow through here. Just package together either big plays or some missed opportunities, maybe where he was open and available but didn't get targeted, or the throw missed him for whatever reason. And I'll make some general observations, then we'll get a little bit more specific later. The big fumble in the AFC Championship game is what many of us will remember until he atones for it. I think he will. He certainly made enough big plays in 18 games played as a rookie to support us having confidence in him like the coaching staff does. His impact in the loss to the Chiefs was pretty clear. He's the best player on the field at various times. He competes and he can win against some of the best corners, outside corners, in the league. He played against some very good defensive backs, made plays. This first section of plays that I'm illustrating here is just designed to show potential based on his 2023 film. I like that he made plays on a number of different concepts. Some of them were down the field, intermediate, short concepts. I will show a number of screens here in a different segment of plays in a moment. So I'm omitting them from this portion right now. Very good at underneath stuff, if you ask me, evidenced by some of the stuff that we see on film. Is he a home run hitter? Is he a possession guy? Because he only averaged 11 yards per catch. Is he a slot receiver? I think he's all of them at different times. I think he, depending on where he lines up and what Todd Monken wants him to do, I think he can be any of those things, and I believe the film shows it. He made an impact in various parts of the field, and I think he can be used and will be used as a chess piece for the offense. Personally, there was a time during the year where I said I'd like to see him used less on bubbles or screens, and more on typical wide receiver routes like the ones you see here, in or out breaking routes, intermediate, double moves, verticals, whatever you want to label each of these concepts as. I just don't think he needs to be given the ball 3 to 4 times on bubble screens, but I understand why. Because he's dangerous with the ball in his hands. He can make people miss. When you look at him and I understand that other people have a different opinion. That's no problem if yours is different. But when you combine him with Bateman, Aguilar, Des Walker, I really think they can be a dangerous group at wide receiver when Zay Flowers' usage, deployment is unpredictable, meaning he's not always going to be the bubble screen guy. He's not always going to be the guy running the deeper portion. I think those 4 guys can be used interchangeably. They're relatively versatile. If you ask me, I'm talking about the route, how the routes work themselves out down the field. Aguilar is obviously a very high percentage guy, particularly on third downs, at least in 2023 with the Ravens. And when you throw Andrews and Likely into the mix, I think this is head and shoulders above anything we've had talent-wise in recent years. Put the addition of Derrick Henry into this offense, and it's just in another dimension from an overall talent perspective, if you ask me. The offensive line is clearly going to be a determining factor, along with turnovers. The one thing that really stuck out for me, going back to the film of Flowers one more time through, is that he got everyone in our division at some point with a big play. In the case of the Steelers, he did have a bad drop early, I thought, over the middle of the field, if I recall. 5 catches for 73 yards in our first game against them, the loss on the road in Pittsburgh, some of which you see here. A lot of it was down the field and towards the sideline. Against the Bengals in week 2, he had the big bomb 53-yard catch down the left seam. And then in the rematch in week 11, he had a screen for a touchdown that got called back. I'll show you that one later on. Week 4 against the Browns. Big play down the field on a superb throw from Lamar that you guys have seen once already. You'll see here in a moment. Where he's like, Lamar's like shifting out of the pocket to his right or left on the screen right now. And then Flowers works his magic towards the deep right portion of the field. Nice catch down the field near the sideline. He's a dangerous guy for defenses to control. I think you see, that's the reason why I've chose these plays to illustrate here. Lamar trusts him. No matter what the route design is, intermediate, deep, short, Lamar trusts that Flowers can make a play. Similar to Andrews in that regard, if you ask me, and that he trusts him, and he will oftentimes look for him and give him an opportunity to make a play. Some usages on screens here. This is obviously the one against the Bengals that gets called back because of a hold on OBJ. Not really sure it's a clear penalty if you ask me, but the larger point here is Flowers can make people miss. He can read the defense and fit where he's supposed to. And so that's the reason why he was used on screen so much. Fine, I understand. There's the horizontal stretch that Todd Monken mentioned in training camp last year and clearly put to use on the field in 2023. I am very interested, I'm sure you are too, in the how we use 12 personnel and 11 personnel interchangeably in 2024. Meaning, how does that define or possibly predict Flowers' deployment? If we're in 12 personnel, Andrews and Likely are on the field, and we go 11, one of those 2 tight ends comes off, and a third receiver comes onto the field. What does that mean for the routes that Monken will ask Zay Flowers to run? I think that play, this one that's showing through a second time, illustrates the potential for Flowers when he has the ball in his hand. That's why I was talking about touches early on and how it'll break down in 2023 is interesting to me. I'm not nervous or anxious about it, but I wouldn't want to see his overall targets decrease. I'm not sure about you. Feel free to let me know how you feel about that in the comment section. Andrews is returning to play a full season. That'll compensate for the 64 targets that OBJ got. Hopefully some of those opportunities are transferred to Rashad Bateman. What number would you be satisfied with Flowers getting in terms of overall targets? I wouldn't have a problem if someone said 130, understanding that there's so many talented players in this offense. It's almost like there's not enough footballs to go around. One thing I really like on these screens, I'm pretty sure it's one of the things that Todd Monken and the offensive staff thought about when they chose to deploy him there so much. He's really good at knowing whether to press the sideline outside of the block to try to get more yards or cut back against the grain before getting down to the ground to try to protect himself. You see two examples of it with these plays against the 49ers. This one, trying to press to the sideline immediately because that's where the space is. The horizontal spread of the offense creates those opportunities. And then this one, he kind of cuts back against the grain, avoiding dangerous defenders, does the same thing against the Texans and a couple other teams. If you're not a spread, if you're a spread team and your quarterback isn't throwing these bubbles when the space is there, when it's uncovered, when you have numbers, then you're not really a spread team. Or against a blitzer like you see some of these teams where Lamar seems to understand or recognize pre-snap that a nickel defender, slot corner, if you will, is probably going to blitz off the edge and create that space like you see there with Mike Hilton for the Bengals. I think I'd like to see him used more in intermediate routes during 2024 than more so than screens. But that horizontal alignment that Monken is going to create with the formation is going to necessitate that when teams try to cheat in a whole lot, that Lamar's going to throw the bubble screen out there. So that makes sense to me. I would say this. I'd like to see him used less on the fast sweeps where Lamar's in the shotgun and he goes in motion in front of Lamar and Lamar hands the ball off to him, although we do have a touchdown against the Chargers that you saw in the clip. So I think we need him elsewhere. Basically in the route concept, occasional use on the sweeps. In my opinion, as far as the sweeps go, it's better to be unpredictable with who gets the ball. I think that's more beneficial for the offense. Last year, it was generally Zay Flowers, 2023. Prior to that, 2020, 21, 22, it was normally Devin Duvernay when he was here solely. But I want to mention one play that I've talked about a couple of times in videos during the season and then postseason is the sweep to Rashad Bateman against the Arizona Cardinals on the road in the second half. Went for 18 yards. We had never given that to Bateman before. Am I saying Bateman should be the sweep guy and Flowers shouldn't? No. I think that we should be unpredictable and almost interchangeable with that concept because there was a time during the year where when Flowers went in motion, you knew that we were either coming up with a read play or was a possibility for a bubble to the side he was motioning to. He's just a weapon. We got to get him the ball. He did have, I think, 56 or 57 rushing yards on the year. But I thought the usage there offered less returns in 2023, except for the 37-yard touchdown run against the Chargers that I think I showed you a couple times through here. I just think we could get those things accomplished, the sweep, with other guys and use a wider array of players, a wider net of players, if you will, and not just exclusively Zay Flowers. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fumble against the Chiefs. Only going to show the end zone angle of this one. I think it can be a learning experience for Zay Flowers and the entire Ravens offense, really. You have to protect the football in these high-stakes situations. I know it didn't come back to haunt the Ravens earlier in the year, except for this game in the AFC Championship. But it sure has in the playoffs over the course of the last 4 years. Multiple turnovers inside the red zone. I covered it in video form once already after the season was over. Not just inside the red zone, I should say inside the 5-yard line or at the goal line. It's really plagued this offense, if you ask me, dating back to 2020. You got the 99-yard fumble return by Sam Hubbard in the 2022 wildcard loss in Cincinnati, and that was a game the Ravens should have won. They outplayed the Bengals. The defense was solid. They also had the pick six by Taron Johnson in the second half of our divisional playoff loss at Buffalo in 2020. A poor decision there by Lamar to throw the ball into zone. There's leveraged defenders on both sides of Mark Andrews, and Taron Johnson picks it off and takes it to the house. You got the interception we threw later in this game against the Chiefs in the fourth quarter. Poor throw, poor decision to throw it in that location. Flowers is only a part of those situations. It's not systemic or endemic, I should say, to Zay Flowers. It might be systemic to our team. And that's my problem with it is are the coaches promoting awareness and ball security more? I'm sure they are. The onus falls on the players, too. Should the players, Flowers included, have a higher internal understanding of the moment at times? Sure. When you have multiple guys with turnovers, though, inside the red zone or at the goal line in recent years, Lamar, Flowers, Huntley, I think the coaches have to make it more of a point of emphasis, in my opinion, that in those situations we can't leave points on the board. It's happened in the regular season as well. 2021 at home against the Colts, Lamar stripped on the goal line. Colts take it all the way back to the house. Thankfully, it was called back for an illegal lateral, I think, by Shaq Leonard. Anyway, you guys let me know if you have concerns about Flowers and ball security. I don't. I really don't at all. I have concerns about the Ravens' focus on it from a organizational standpoint in playoff moments, in big moments inside the red zone. The mentality of making sure that we secure the football, and if we have to score on one more play, we have to score on one more play. Also, let me know what you guys think of the plays I chose to use here. I don't think Flowers is a screen guy, a bubble guy. I don't think he's a high percentage guy just because of the type of targets they created for him. I think he's a weapon. As a wide receiver, as a true wide receiver, he's a weapon. And in terms of the bubble screens, it reminds me of toss. Conceptually, I would refer to bubble screens as toss. So when I say that when I say he's a toss guy, that's what I mean, because he can make people miss. Guys you toss the football to at lower levels of football are the guys who can make people miss and take it to the house with a simple concept. The bubble screen is a simple concept. I do expect him to be utilized there in 2024. But the talent that he showed, the effectiveness and efficiency he showed down the field, I think is pretty obvious. And he makes contested catches with contact as well. Does a fantastic job of getting his feet in bounds along the sideline. I should have talked about that a little bit on a couple of those catches earlier. He has speed to really threaten the defense when there's an open seam. The only guy that I have seen keep up with him in 1 year in the NFL is Keaton Mitchell on that screen touchdown that was called back against the Bengals in Week 11. Finally, he wants the football. Zay Flowers seems to be a guy who thinks he's the best player on the field, and at times he can be. I think at times in that Chiefs game, he was our best player on the field, our most effective guy, certainly, from a statistical standpoint. When you look at Andrews returning to full health, the continued ascendance of Isaiah Likely, the addition of Derrick Henry, hopefully more opportunities for Rashad Bateman, Flowers is really just part of a loaded offense, in my opinion, that has a far higher ceiling in 2024 than the group that just posted, I think, 27.7 points per game in 2023. You guys let me know what you think of the plays I used to illustrate his skills, how effective he was. I know that people have concerns about him only having 858 yards receiving on the year. I expect that number to go up. And what you think of the plays I chose to illustrate his skills and how I think dangerous he is pretty much every time he touches the football. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study look at Zay Flowers, I wanted to get out earlier on Saturday morning, but it took me a while to get it done this morning. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy it, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.